Welcome back. Our final musical term for today is articulation, which means the way a note is played. We might say that the musician played with a very smooth articulation, or that the articulation of a piece of music was very short and bouncy. Now, unlike dynamics and tempo, this is a slightly stranger concept to get your head around, so we're going to do some demonstrations. If we're describing articulation, what we're mainly talking about is the contrast between music that is smooth, joined together, long held, and flowing. This would be a demonstration of that kind of articulation. All of the notes are really smooth, there's no gaps between them, and it sounds pretty good. However, articulation can also be short, separate, disjointed, and kind of bouncy sounding. So that would be when there are larger gaps between the notes, like this. The notes were much shorter, there were much bigger gaps between the notes, but the tempo and dynamics were the same. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about articulation. The same notes, played at the same speed and dynamic level, but played differently to make them sound either smooth or separate. So, once again, let's have a listen to an example of articulation. So I want you to think about what is the articulation at the very beginning of the performance, and how does that articulation change? And what words are we going to use to describe it? So, hopefully, if we were listening carefully, we picked up that at the beginning of the performance, the articulation was very short and very separate. However, as the performance went along, it became increasingly smooth. The notes became longer, and they started to flow into one another a little bit more. So when we're listening for articulation, that's what we're listening for, that sense of flow. Are the notes flowing together, or are they short and separate? So why change articulation? A smooth articulation can make music feel very relaxed. It can often feel very romantic in a lot of classical music. That's what it's used for. It can feel very comfortable, and it can also sound very graceful. Whereas a short or separate articulation can sound very energetic, it can sound very bouncy, it can sound very rhythmic, but it can also sound aggressive and angry. So very similar to our changes in energy levels with loudness and quietness with our dynamics and with our tempo, a smooth articulation is a slightly lower energy level, whereas a short or separate articulation conveys a higher energy level. And between those three key terms of music, we can start to describe and analyze music in the same way you already know how to analyze drama. So let's put it into practice.